Somewhere under the Philippines there is gold. Not a little gold, not a rumor of gold. Historians, treasure hunters, governments, and intelligence agencies have been searching for it for over 80 years. People have died looking for it. A Philippine president was assassinated, some believe, because he found it. The CIA has been accused of knowing exactly where it is and saying nothing. The treasure is called Yamashita's gold, and it is one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the history of the modern world. This is what they buried along with it. To understand Yamashita's gold, you have to understand what Japan was doing in Asia between 1937 and 1945. Japan was not just conquering territory, it was looting it, systematically, deliberately, on a scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. As Japanese forces swept through China, Korea, the Philippines, Singapore, Indonesia, Burma, and across Southeast Asia, they stripped everything of value from every nation they occupied: gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, priceless artifacts, religious treasures, museum collections, central bank reserves, private wealth accumulated over centuries. All of it was taken, cataloged, transported. The operation had a code name inside Japanese military intelligence. It was called Kin no Yuri Golden Lily, and it was overseen personally by Emperor Hirohito's own brother, Prince Yasuhito Chichibu. This was not rogue soldiers looting on the battlefield. This was a state-sponsored systematic theft of the wealth of an entire continent organized at the highest levels of the Japanese Imperial government. The total value of what was stolen has never been definitively calculated. Conservative estimates put it in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Some researchers believe the true figure exceeds $2 trillion in today's money. And as the war turned against Japan, as American forces began closing in across the Pacific, Japan needed somewhere to hide it. They chose the Philippines. General Tomoyuki Yamashita was the commanding Japanese general in the Philippines in the final years of World War II. He was one of the most feared and respected military minds in the Japanese Army, the man who conquered Singapore in just 70 days, earning the nickname the Tiger of Malaya. By 1944, Yamashita knew Japan was losing. American forces under General Douglas MacArthur were island-hopping across the Pacific, and the Philippines was next. And somewhere in the mountains and jungles and underground tunnel systems of the Philippine archipelago, the looted treasure of Asia was being hidden. The gold was reportedly transported to the Philippines by submarine and ship throughout 1943 and 1944. Filipino and Allied prisoners of war were forced to dig tunnels, construct underground vaults, and carry the treasure deep into the earth at dozens of sites across the country. And then, according to multiple accounts from survivors and researchers, the prisoners who dug the tunnels were sealed inside them, alive. The Japanese engineers who designed the burial systems were reportedly executed. The Filipino laborers who built them were killed. Everyone who knew the exact locations of the treasure sites was eliminated. Yamashita himself was captured by American forces in September 1945, just days after Japan's surrender. He was tried for war crimes not for the treasure, but for the Manila Massacre, in which over 100,000 Filipino civilians were killed in the final weeks of the war. He was hanged in the Philippines on February 23, 1946, and whatever he knew about the exact locations of the treasure went with him to his grave. Or did it? Here is where the story stops being a war mystery and starts being something much darker. In 1971, a Filipino man named Rogelio Roxas was digging in the mountains near Baguio City in northern Luzon. He had spent years following old maps, interviewing elderly Filipinos who remembered Japanese activity during the war, and piecing together clues about a specific burial site. What he found was extraordinary. A hidden chamber. Inside it, a golden Buddha statue approximately 1 meter tall. And stacked around it hundreds of boxes that Roxas believed contained gold bullion. Roxas could not move everything alone. He took the golden Buddha and a handful of gold bars and went home. Within days, Ferdinand Marcos knew. Marcos, then president of the Philippines, sent soldiers to Roxas's home. They confiscated the golden Buddha. They arrested Roxas. They beat him. They tortured him for information about the exact location of the chamber. Roxas was released, but the Buddha was never returned. He sued Ferdinand Marcos and his wife Imelda in a Hawaiian court after Marcos was overthrown in 1986. In 1996, 6 years after Roxas died, a Hawaiian jury ruled in his estate's favor and awarded damages of over $22 billion, one of the largest civil judgments in American legal history, $22 billion, for one Buddha and a few gold bars from one site. If Rogelio Roxas found just one of potentially dozens of burial sites across the Philippines, what does that tell you about the total scale of what is still down there? Now here is the part that mainstream history almost never discusses. Ferdinand Marcos did not just steal Roxas's discovery. According to multiple researchers, journalists, and intelligence sources, Marcos spent decades systematically excavating Yamashita treasure sites across the Philippines. The Marcos family wealth famously represented by Imelda's 3,000 pairs of shoes, the real estate holdings across Manhattan and Hawaii, the billions stashed in Swiss bank accounts, has never been fully explained by Marcos's presidential salary or any legitimate business activity. Some researchers believe the Marcos fortune was not built through corruption alone. They believe it was built on Yamashita's gold. Sterling Seagrave and Peggy Seagrave, two investigative journalists who spent decades researching this topic, published a book arguing that Marcos recovered billions in Japanese war loot and, with the knowledge and assistance of elements within the American government, quietly laundered it into the global financial system. Which brings us to the most explosive part of this entire story. Why would America help cover this up? Here is the theory that intelligence researchers have pursued for decades. After World War II, the United States government faced a serious problem in Asia. The Cold War was beginning. Communist movements were gaining strength across Southeast Asia. America needed to fund covert anti-communist operations across the region, operations that could not be authorized by Congress and could not appear in any official budget. According to researchers, including the Seagraves, American intelligence operatives recovered significant quantities of Yamashita's gold in the immediate aftermath of the war. This treasure was allegedly used to create a secret slush fund called by some researchers the Black Eagle Trust that financed decades of covert CIA operations across Asia. If this is true, it means the looted treasure of an entire continent stolen from the people of China, Korea, the Philippines, and across Southeast Asia was used by the United States government to fund secret wars, support authoritarian regimes, and manipulate the politics of nations across Asia for decades. The victims of the looting never received a dollar of it back, and the governments that benefited from it have never been held accountable. Today, the search for Yamashita's gold continues. There are active excavation sites across the Philippines, private treasure hunters, government investigations, tipsters who claim their grandfathers worked on the tunnel systems and drew maps before they died. In 2005, a group of treasure hunters in Mindanao claimed to have found a massive underground complex consistent with a Japanese wartime burial site. The Philippine government intervened, and the excavation was shut down. What was found, if anything, was never publicly disclosed. The Philippine government officially maintains that Yamashita's gold is largely a myth, a legend inflated by greed and wishful thinking. But that same government has a law, Presidential Decree 1899, that requires anyone who finds wartime treasure in the Philippines to immediately report it to the state. You do not write laws about things that do not exist. Here is what we know for certain. Japan looted Asia on a massive scale during World War II. The Golden Lily operation was real and documented. The Philippines was used as a storage and transit point for war loot. Rogelio Roxas found something significant enough that Ferdinand Marcos sent soldiers to take it by force. A Hawaiian court awarded $22 billion in damages over that theft. The Marcos family accumulated wealth that has never been fully explained, and the full accounting of what Japan stole from Asia and where it went has never been made public by any government. The rest is the space between the facts, and in that space somewhere under the mountains and jungles and tunnels of the Philippine Islands, something is waiting. Whether it is billions in gold or the ghost of a story too inconvenient for governments to ever fully tell nobody outside the most classified intelligence files in Washington and Tokyo can say for certain. But the people of the Philippines whose ancestors were forced at gunpoint to bury it deserve to know the truth. Subscribe to They Erased. Because the most valuable things they buried in the Philippines were never just gold. They were the truth. And we are digging it up.